On May 4, 1962, a man stood in front of a room full of reporters in Los Angeles and accused the police department of murder. Not metaphorically, murder. The LAPD had raided a mosque, shot 7 unarmed men, and killed one of them, a man named Ronald Stokes, and the press was calling the victims the problem. That man at the podium had been born into terror, raised in foster homes, locked in a prison cell, and written off by a teacher who told him a black boy had no business dreaming. By the time the world knew his name, he had become the sharpest voice in America. They taught you he was the angry one, the dangerous one, the opposite of Dr. King. Let me decode who he actually was. I'm Malik, and this is Cypher with Malik, where we break down the Black American history they left out of your textbook. Today, the full story, birth to assassination, of El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz, the man you know as Malcolm X. This isn't the cardboard cutout, not the soundbite they play for 15 seconds every February. We're going to walk through his entire life, because you can't understand the man at that podium without understanding the boy whose house got burned down, the hustler who almost died in the streets, and the prisoner who taught himself to think. If you learned something today, hit subscribe. That's how we keep telling these stories. Let's get into it. Malcolm Little was born May 19, 1925, in Omaha, Nebraska, the fourth of his father's children with Louise Little. And before Malcolm could even walk, his family was already a target. His father, Earl Little, was a Baptist preacher. But more than that, he was an organizer for Marcus Garvey's UNIA, the largest black self-determination movement in American history. Earl Little stood up in front of black folks and told them they had a right to own land, own businesses, and govern themselves. That kind of talk got you a visit from men in hoods. While Louise was pregnant with Malcolm, Klansmen rode up to their home in Omaha, smashed the windows, and told the family to leave town. They did. They moved to Lansing, Michigan, and the terror followed. In 1929, their home was burned to the ground. Malcolm was 4 years old. He would later say he remembered the fire, the family standing in their underclothes in the night, watching everything they owned burn, while the police and firemen just watched. Then, in 1931, Earl Little was found dead, his body on the streetcar tracks nearly cut in two. The authorities called it an accident. The family knew better. They believed he had been murdered by the same white supremacists who had been hunting him for years. And because the death was ruled a possible suicide, the larger life insurance policy refused to pay. So the violence didn't just take Malcolm's father, it took the family's survival. This is the part they leave out. Before Malcolm X said a single controversial word, America had already shown him exactly who it was. Louise Little was now a widow with 8 children in the middle of the Great Depression, a black woman fighting the state for every scrap. The welfare agents circled. They picked at the family, undermined her, and in 1939, they had Louise committed to a state mental institution where she would remain for around 25 years. The children were scattered into foster homes. The family was, in Malcolm's own words, destroyed by people who had decided they knew better. He saw, up close, and as a child, how the state could dismantle a black family piece by piece and call it help. Now here's the thing they really don't tell you. Malcolm was brilliant, top of his class president in a nearly all-white school, and he had a dream. He wanted to be a lawyer. He told his English teacher that. And his teacher, a man he respected, looked at this gifted black kid and told him to be realistic. He said being a lawyer was no realistic goal for a black boy and suggested he become a carpenter instead. Malcolm never forgot it. He said that was the moment something in him changed. If the smartest path was closed no matter how good he was, why play their game at all? He dropped out. He drifted towards something else entirely. He went to Boston to live with his half-sister Ella, then to Harlem, and the kid who wanted to be a lawyer became a hustler they called Detroit Red for the reddish tint in his hair. Numbers running, drug dealing, burglary. He was living fast in a world that had told him there was no other lane. Malcolm never romanticized this period, and neither will I. He'd tell you himself. He was self-destructing, headed for an early grave or a long sentence. It was the sentence. In 1946, at age 20, Malcolm was arrested for a burglary ring in Boston and sentenced to 8 to 10 years in prison. The judge gave him extra time, many believe, because some of his accomplices were white women. For most people, that's where the story ends. A black kid swallowed by the system at 20, but for Malcolm, the cell is where the transformation began. In prison, Malcolm's family introduced him to the teachings of the Nation of Islam, a black Muslim movement led by El-Hajj Muhammad that preached black pride, self-discipline, economic independence, and a sharp rejection of white supremacy. For a man who had watched white terror burn his home, break his mother, and bury his father, the message landed like a key turning in a lock. But Malcolm didn't just convert. He got an education. He was frustrated that he couldn't put his thoughts into words. So he got a dictionary and he copied it, by hand, page after page, word after word, until the vocabulary became his. He read history, philosophy, religion, devouring everything in the prison library, sometimes reading by the glow of a corridor light after lights out. He walked into that prison a broken hustler named Malcolm Little. He walked out in 1952 as a disciplined, razor-sharp minister, and he dropped the name Little, the surname slavery had given his family, and replaced it with a single letter, X. The unknown, the stolen name, the African identity that was taken and never returned. From now on, he was Malcolm X. Malcolm rose through the Nation of Islam like nothing they had ever seen. El-Hajj Muhammad sent him to build temples, Boston, Philadelphia, then Harlem's Temple No. 7. And wherever Malcolm went, the membership exploded. When he started, the nation had a few hundred members. Within years, it had tens of thousands, and Malcolm X was the reason. In 1958, he married Betty Sanders, Betty X, later Dr. Betty Shabazz, a strong, educated woman who would build a life and raise 6 daughters with him, often while he was traveling, organizing, and under constant surveillance. In 1959, a television documentary called The Hate That Hate Produced put the Nation of Islam in front of white America for the first time, and Malcolm became a national figure overnight. Reporters wanted him, colleges wanted him, because he said the things no one else would say on camera. He rejected nonviolence as a strategy when the other side wasn't being nonviolent. He called integration a distraction from real power. He told Black America to stop begging for acceptance and start building independence, dignity, and self-defense by any means necessary. And this is where that 1962 Los Angeles press conference comes in. When the LAPD raided the mosque and killed Ronald Stokes, Malcolm flew to LA, stood in front of the cameras, and named it police murder, state violence. He turned a local tragedy into a national indictment. That was the power he had. He could make America look directly at what it preferred to ignore. But the nation that built Malcolm also began to fear him. He was more famous than the organization itself, and tensions with the leadership were rising. Then, in November 1963, President Kennedy was assassinated. Asked about it, Malcolm said the killing was a case of the chickens coming home to roost, meaning the violence America exported had finally come home. The backlash was instant. El-Hajj Muhammad silenced him, barred him from speaking publicly for 90 days. But the deeper wound was personal. Malcolm had learned that El-Hajj Muhammad, the man he had revered as a moral teacher, had fathered multiple children in secret with young secretaries, violating the very code he preached. For Malcolm, the foundation cracked. In March 1964, Malcolm X left the Nation of Islam. He founded the Muslim Mosque, Incorporated, and then the Organization of Afro-American Unity, a secular pan-African movement to fight for Black human rights, and to connect the struggle in America to the struggle across the African diaspora. He was free. He was also now completely exposed. In April 1964, Malcolm made the pilgrimage to Mecca, the Hajj, and it changed him. For the first time, he worshipped alongside Muslims of every color, white, black, brown, as equals, as brothers. He wrote home that he was rethinking some of his hardest positions on race. He had spent his life, with good reason, seeing white America as the enemy. In Mecca, he saw a vision of human brotherhood that didn't erase justice. It expanded who could be part of the fight. He took a new name, El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz. He traveled through Africa and the Middle East, meeting heads of state, building alliances, and developing a bold strategy to bring the United States before the United Nations and charge it with human rights violations against Black Americans. Not civil rights, human rights. He was internationalizing the struggle, and that made him more dangerous to the powerful than he had ever been. This is the Malcolm they never show you, not frozen in 1963, evolving, sharper, broader, more global, right up until the end. By early 1965, Malcolm knew he was a marked man. He was getting death threats constantly. He told interviewers plainly that he didn't expect to live much longer and that powerful forces wanted him gone. On February 14, 1965, his home in Queens was firebombed in the middle of the night. Betty and the children, and Betty was pregnant, barely escaped. No one was ever held accountable for it. 1 week later, February 21, 1965, the Audubon Ballroom in Harlem. Malcolm stepped up to speak to a crowd of his supporters, his wife and daughters in the audience, and gunmen opened fire. He was shot more than a dozen times. He was pronounced dead at the hospital. He was 39 years old. 3 men were convicted, but here's what they didn't tell you for decades. In 2021, 2 of those men, Muhammad Aziz and Khalil Islam, were officially exonerated after an investigation revealed that the FBI and the NYPD had withheld evidence that could have cleared them. Both the Bureau and the police had been surveilling Malcolm for years, with informants inside his circle. The full truth of who ordered his death, and who let it happen, is still contested to this day. Later that same year, the autobiography of Malcolm X, written with Alex Haley, was published. It became one of the most important books of the 20th century, required reading for generations who needed to understand how a man rebuilds himself from nothing. Malcolm's ideas didn't die at the Audubon. They detonated. The Black Power movement, the Black Panther Party, the entire language of Black pride and self-determination in the late 60s and beyond, it all carries his fingerprints, by any means necessary. We didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us. The dignity, the precision, the refusal to ask permission to be free. For years, they framed him as the dangerous counterpart to Dr. King, the threat. But the older that framing gets, the more obvious the truth becomes. Malcolm X wasn't preaching hate. He was demanding that Black people love themselves enough to defend themselves, build for themselves, and never beg for what was already theirs. That's not the angry one. That's the clear one. Malcolm Little, Detroit Red. Malcolm X, El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz. 1 man, 4 names, and a life that refused to stay where America tried to put it. Black history is American history, and this is the part they left out. If this taught you something, subscribe, drop a comment with what surprised you most, and share it with somebody who only knows the 15-second version. Next time, we're decoding another story they tried to bury. I'm Malik, know your history.
For too long, others defined who we were. Now we're reclaiming our narrative.